Tonight, the Attorney General once again proving he's acting more like Trump's personal lawyer as opposed to representing we, the American people. We're going to show you how William Barr's intervention in the Roger Stone case is unprecedented and deeply worrisome. Then, we'll recap the New Hampshire primary and take a look how it's shaking up the Democratic field. Also, as we now learn that more than 100 U.S. service members suffered brain trauma after Iran launched missiles at U.S. bases in Iraq, the president's continuing to make light of those head injuries. In fact, he's doubling down. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, and thank you for joining us this evening. A stunning turn of events when the Justice Department's Bigfoots the Roger Stone case and interferes just when it's time for sentencing. The Justice Department is no longer recommending a 7 to 9 year prison sentence for longtime presidential ally Roger Stone. President Trump now congratulating Attorney General Bill Barr for overriding the views of the career prosecutors, tweeting the case against Stone was, his words, out of control and perhaps should not have even been brought. Now, a jury convicted Stone of witness tampering, lying to Congress, and obstructing a congressional investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. The recommendation reversal, it comes after it had already been submitted to the judge and just hours after the president tweeted overnight that the prosecutor's suggested sentence was, again in his words, horrible and very unfair.
I thought the whole prosecution was ridiculous.
All four prosecutors who successfully convicted Stone quit the case, one of them even leaving the Department of Justice. It's a protest without precedent in department history. Trump denies he pressured the Justice Department to go easy on his longtime friend and former campaign advisor.
I have the absolute right to do it. I stay out of things to a degree that people wouldn't believe, but I didn't speak to him.
In the revised recommendation, a new prosecutor telling the court 7 to 9 years for Stone would not be appropriate and leaving discretion to the judge in the case.
For the Attorney General to step in this way at this point is practically unheard of.
Republicans on Capitol Hill largely silent. Democrats outraged.
What is more stinking than the most powerful person in the country literally changing the rules to benefit a crony guilty of breaking the law?
And I want to remind you some of the details about Stone's case. This was not some simple political case here. We're talking about a jury of Stone's peers who found him guilty on all 7 counts. So, as I said, this was a fair trial. Also, in the piece I mentioned, Stone was convicted of witness tampering. That's a nice way of saying what he actually did. He threatened the life of someone who came forward to testify, and he also threatened, just for good measure, to kill the guy's dog. Prosecutors, they even have the text to prove it. Stone also deliberately obstructed investigations by the FBI and several congressional committees lying under oath. By the way, this is all part of President Trump's revenge tour post-impeachment. This is how Politico described it. Quote, the reckoning followed President Trump's impeachment acquittal came into sharper focus on Tuesday. Less than a week after the Senate rejected 2 articles of impeachment against Trump, the president bashed federal prosecutors for recommending a stiff sentence for Roger Stone, then attacked the judge overseeing high-profile cases involving his ex-advisors, then suggested the military could discipline Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, a star impeachment witness. Vindman and Ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland, they were both shown the door last week in what's being now called the Friday Night Massacre. That is, of course, a reference to the infamous Saturday Night Massacre during Watergate. In 1973, President Nixon ordered the Attorney General and his deputy to fire Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox. They both refused, and both men were pushed out. Nixon finally found someone who'd carry out the dirty work, Solicitor General Robert Bork. Bork fired Cox. Now we fast forward to today. President Trump, he just pulled the nomination of a former U.S. attorney from D.C. who was tapped for a top post at Treasury. By the way, coincidence of all coincidence, Jesse Liu supervised the Stone case. I want to bring in our first guest tonight, former federal prosecutor Gene Rossi, and more than that, he's very acquainted with the man in the middle of this, William Barr, as well. You know, Gene, sometimes because so much of this stuff, like a fire hose, hits us, This is crazy. This is banana republic stuff. I'm not even going to get into the politics of it. For every Republican who said, oh, he'll learn his lesson after impeachment, he's double and triple down. The lesson he even, in fact, said it today was, you know, basically, I can act with impunity. Explain to people. I had a former federal prosecutor yesterday when I said, this is really uncommon what happened. She turned around, she goes, not uncommon. This is unprecedented. I've never heard of this before. Basically, Maine justice coming in over the top and saying, never mind what, you know, federal prosecutors did. Talk about not just how you've never heard of this, but just how dangerous this is beyond, you know, Roger Stone.
The thing that bothers me the most, Richard, about Trump's influence over Attorney General Bill Barr is the esprit de corps of the Department of Justice is being decimated. And I worked there for almost 30 years, and I took great pride in trying to establish an esprit de corps where career prosecutors, line prosecutors, felt that they could do their job impartially, fairly, and without outside influence or political pressures. If you walk the halls of Maine justice, there is an air in those hallways that smacks of political influence, and that bothers me the most. Richard Nixon had John Mitchell. Donald Trump has Bill Barr. And we know what happened to John Mitchell, okay? Now let's talk about the unprecedented move by the Attorney General. The Maine justice folks, including the Attorney General, say, oh, we didn't know that this memo was going to be filed by the 4 career prosecutors, all of whom are heroes to me. We didn't know that they were going to recommend 7 to 9 years. Baloney. Number one, the 7 to 9 years follows the U.S. sentencing guidelines, which is the Bible of career prosecutors. I followed it. Number two, in this high-profile case, Richard, there is absolutely no way that 3 weeks ago the Attorney General did not know that the guideline recommendation that we would follow as prosecutors, or they would follow, would be 7 to 9 years. The only thing that happened, and that can explain Bill Barr blinking and being afraid of his shadow, is that tweet by the President of the United States, and highly likely someone from the White House, not the President, called Bill Barr and said, what are you doing? That really bothers me. It troubles me. I talked to a career prosecutor yesterday who's been there about 20 years. He said the morale in the department is the lowest he has ever seen. And I believe him.
You know, Trump complained when Sessions recused himself. He said, where's my Roy Cohn? Well, he's got it in William Barr. And we've talked about it when Barr, you even supported his nomination. You believe that he was a guy with, you know, not only an impeccable resume, but he knew the line right and wrong. He testified at his confirmation hearing that, my God, you know, forget about even coming near that line. I wouldn't even be near the area code when we look at it now. I want to play a soundbite from the president when pressed about this, and even the idea of maybe even using a pardon here for Roger Stone. This is what our president had to say about the process.
Are you considering a pardon for
I don't want to say that yet, but I tell you what, people were hurt viciously and badly by these corrupt people. And I want to thank, if you look at what happened, I want to thank the Justice Department for seeing this horrible thing. And I didn't speak to them, by the way, just so you understand. They saw the horribleness of a 9-year sentence. We have killers, we have murderers all over the place, nothing happens. And then they put a man in jail and destroy his life, his family, his wife, his children. 9 years in jail, it's a disgrace.
Well, I want to say this. When Barr was nominated, Richard, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I spoke highly of him. And one of the many reasons is, in '92, I served under AG Barr, and also I trained Bill Barr's daughter and his son-in-law, one of his son-in-laws. And I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Now, I wouldn't give him any doubt, period. Now, why is he doing all this? Simple. He loves being Attorney General, and he knows if he acts like Jeff Sessions, who recused himself and acted like an attorney general should, Barr knows that he will be kicked out. So he is now watching his shadow, and he's like a lapdog for the President of the United States. There's no way you can conclude otherwise. Now, here's what bothers me. Go to the Southern District of New York. If they are going to continue the investigation of Rudy Giuliani, if they are, it's highly likely that Bill Barr is going to snuff it out. Or if the Southern District of New York wants to open an investigation into either a Trump family business, a Trump family member, or anything even remotely related to Trump and his election, including President Trump being a conspirator of Michael Cohen, violating the FEC laws, if they want to go forward on that under this presidency, highly likely that Bill Barr will snuff that out. Bill Barr should recuse himself from anything in Southern District of New York relating to Giuliani, number one, and Bill Barr should recuse himself from anything relating to Ukraine because he was mentioned in that perfect July 25th call. And the last thing I want to say is this. Lev Parnas is trying to give information to the prosecutors and to Capitol Hill that could possibly implicate the president and his cronies. Bill Barr is not hearing any of it. But what does he do? He opens up a special hotline. There's probably a special room, figuratively, in the Department of Justice for Rudy to give potential dirt on Joe Biden and his son Hunter. That's disgraceful, and that goes to the esprit de corps that is being decimated by this Attorney General in this administration. It makes me sick. We are at a fork in the road, the Robert Frost fork in the road, and we have a choice this November, if not before. Are we going to tolerate the president with no guardrails, or are we going to return our country to a democracy that follows the rule of law and has Lady Justice with a blindfold on? That's the fork in the road that we are coming to either November 3rd, if not before, and history will decide whether America is going to step to the plate or remain silent.
I don't think we can overstate the stakes that are going on here. But, Gene, I appreciate your time tonight, as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, everybody, when we come back, we're going to pivot to, obviously, the presidential race. Bernie and Buttigieg, they're up. Biden, he's down, along with Elizabeth Warren. We'll take a look at the state of the Democratic field now. The first two contests are in the books.